hello. Welcome to Thursday. Welcome to another session episode show of Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power and education in real and operational ways. We know power and education is real, and instructional power is even more real. I'm Dr. Tangi. I am your host, CEO, founder of Liaison Educational Partners, where we work with school systems, districts, and individual schools to really transform middle school education. It is that messy place and often the forgotten place where we make sure it's not forgotten. And we want to make sure middle school is memorable. Tonight, we have a fantastic discussion underway. But I want to start by asking you a question. When did you first recognize that you might have been thinking about yourself as not a math person? When did you begin to realize that math was a place where only certain kids were allowed in? I remember when I was in, I would say maybe fourth, fifth grade, we had moved from New York into New Jersey. It was quite a thing. And math became this place or this time of day where my anxiety went up a little bit. And I remember with my own children, math was something that came fairly easy to both of them. They were in schools where they were able to take algebra in middle school. So our son and our daughter took Algebra 1 in the seventh grade. They took geometry in the eighth grade. And then when they got into high school, they were able to take Algebra 2 as freshmen in high school. Now, here's what I know. I know that math trajectory is kind of an anomaly for a lot of people, particularly for young people who look like me. Because as you're going to see tonight, the data suggests that math access is not equal, nor is it equitable. And so we're going to be talking about this trust in math tonight. And we talk about power in education because math curriculum, math instruction is nothing if not a power game. And every week we talk about power in education. I'm going to give you our two definitions. One, we're going to talk about what power in education really is, sort of, the umbrella. And then we're going to come back with our definition of instructional power. So we know education is the instrument of democratic designs and is no less the instrument of power, the control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the elements, the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and instructional philosophy. You would think I remember it by now, reading it tonight, but that's what power is holistically. It is an umbrella force that governs how decisions are made. But here's what it looks like on the instructional level. It can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related opportunities to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. What does that mean? That means if your job gives you the opportunity to make decisions about what a child gets relative to their educational experiences, you have power and you have instructional power, and you 100% are in the business of using it. The question is not whether you have it. The question is, how do you use it? How do you recognize it? Now, I also want to make sure that you remember about our article series. We just wrapped up our Messy Middle article series, and we're coming back with this new article series. We're talking about student agency. We have officially kicked off the beginning of school, or the beginning of back to school, and we want to talk about agency. Agency is a real topic, and we talk about agency in very specific ways. There is a link right there for you to access the article, What Agency Requires of Adults. You can actually get it on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn and make sure you get the article. The other thing I want to talk to you about is I want to share with you our summer power chats. We talk to one education author, we talk about one book, and we talk about one big idea from their book. So when they come out, make sure you get them and you pay attention to them and enjoy, share, and like. And before we go any further, want to invite you to subscribe to our channel. We know that about 80% of the people watching our show are still dating us. I love a good date, but I would love it even more if you made that commitment and became part of the Let's Talk Power Live family. Please go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, and please share it with somebody. Now, let's get into our conversation tonight. Who do I have coming up tonight? We are going to be talking to Dionne Aminata. She is a math expert. We have this long-standing joke every time I would say, I would go, so who cares about math? And we would laugh. And every time we saw each other, we would take pictures. We had this long-standing thing. Aminata is an excellent math guru. And I put the excellent first because it's really important to see her thinking and her rationale. And she's going to walk us through tonight talking about trust in math and why it matters. So let's bring her to the stage right now. All right. Thank you, Dionne Aminata, for joining Let's Talk Power Live. How are you?
I am well. I am well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
It is a pleasure. So let's go ahead. I want to share some data with our audience. I like to have a
Please.
data conversation. We're talking about math, so numbers matter. So let's go ahead
Absolutely.
and start that conversation right now. Here's what we know: math outcomes signal urgency. 28% of eighth graders scored at or above NAEP proficient in math. 39% of eighth graders scored below NAEP basic. Eighth grade math performance has not meaningfully rebounded since 2022. What in the world?
And we say rebounded from where?
Oh,
when
now that's a big question. Rebounded from what? Hello. Yes, absolutely. What does that even mean? What does that mean?
right. And where do we need to rebound to? And so when we think about that kind of data, obviously there's a lack of trust in our students when we think about just the fact that we're not even offering the amount, the level of math that we want students to have. The amount of remediation that happens when we respond to data like that, when we focus in and zero in on that kind of data, is astounding to the point where we're not really even teaching grade level math, and that's really one of the biggest issues. Um, and then when we look at that data that you showed is not disaggregated by race.
No, it's not. It is
Right.
not. Right, which is even more troubling because if we've got 29% at or above proficiency, then we
Mm-hmm.
have 39% below basic. There's a
Mm-hmm.
big chunk of kids who are partially meeting or somewhat meeting. And when we disaggregate that number, we really get to see a much fuller picture. And here's another set of data I want to share with you, this idea of access. So you
Yeah.
heard me talk about my own children at the beginning of the show, where they were in a school, both public and private, where they had this access. But look at these access numbers: 39% of middle
Mm-hmm.
schools with grade 7 or 8 did not offer Algebra 1. Only 48% of public high schools offer calculus. Black students were 15% of high school enrollment, 6% of AP math enrollment. You started that access question. Continue it.
Yes, so I can speak to my personal experience. I was actually one of the privileged ones. My dad has a PhD in electrical engineering. He has a master's in physics. Math was a part of my life growing up and still is. Like if I talk to him today, he like everything is related back to physics. That's physics, right? And so and math and STEM, that was engineering. That's just a part of my life. And so I don't know how my dad knew to fight for me to get into Algebra 1 in eighth grade. My sister and I both, but he did. And we also, he also had us go into, so before I went to high school, I took Algebra 2 in the summer at
Mm-hmm.
a junior college. And so I went, right. So I went into high school by the time I was a junior. I was taking pre-calculus, and as a
Mm-hmm.
senior, no, sorry, as a sophomore, I was taking pre-calculus, and as a junior, I took AP calculus. There was no more no more math classes for me to take my senior year. So but that told me a story about, you know, you really do have to have some kind of back door just to get a foot in terms of access to these courses, to high level mathematics. Um, and my journey with that started in fourth grade. And so getting into like these specialized classes and things like that early on is what got me into that door. And still, as a Black student, I did not have teachers who were just like championing me or even asking me questions. I was the quiet student who just put my head down and did the work.
Did the work. That's
And
right.
asked my questions at home because, like I said, I was privileged to have that in my father, someone who I can ask questions to. Now that's a long story because,
But that's a story that matters because oftentimes we believe Black children don't have that conversation at home. There
right,
is still this real pervasive understanding about us that is narrow in scope and limited in its understanding.
yeah,
And it's a disruptive conversation that you and I are having now to hear that you had a father who had a PhD in chemical engineering. Your dad had a master's in a math related field. And that's something that we don't hear enough about. So
right.
we're happy to hear your story about that. And right before we get into this idea of trust, I wanted you to react to this information.
Hmm.
Trust changes the math experience. There was a study
Yes.
done, and they asked students these questions about their feelings in math, and they said 70% of the students asked said they can be good at math with hard work, and
Hmm.
61% keep trying when math gets hard.
Hmm.
46% feel comfortable asking questions in math. That number surprised me because I thought it would be a lot lower. So that's actually
Right.
it's very surprising and heartening, right? It's heartening. And
Yes.
then 47% often work on interesting math problems. That's another stat that really surprised me. I thought it'd be a lot lower. But this brings us into our conversation tonight. What does it mean to have trust in math? What's the power of trust in math?
Yeah, and you see it right there. Those numbers definitely show that when we leave it up to the students, when we allow students to do the thinking, they are meeting the challenge. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what's not happening in a lot of classrooms is the idea that my students can, our students can. And so, when we shift our mindset to say, I trust in the brilliance of my students. I believe that my students are brilliant. They have something to contribute. They have something to say that will support the learning of the rest of the class. That is where the power lies. If we're talking about power, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where the
Mm-hmm.
power lies. The power lies in the teacher to create that environment, to create those systems where students can share not just their answers, because frankly, when we were in school, when I was in school, it's just about the answers.
Oh,
And
yes. Me
in
too.
too
And I'm
many
older than
classrooms,
you.
in too many classrooms, it's still like that. We just want, like, did you get it? Did you do the thing that I taught you? And did you get the answer right? And now we're seeing a shift in many classrooms because there was a call on a lot of curriculum companies to make a shift. And
Hmm.
so we are seeing a slight shift in how students are experiencing math in the classroom. There are more rich tasks that are available, there are more relevant tasks that are available, and that call has come. But often when we talk about trust, we're talking about getting the students to trust the teacher, getting the students to, you know, uh, share more in class and build relationships, and all of that is amazing and good and right and things that we really need to be doing. But when I talk about trust, I'm talking about the teachers building their trust in their students. And there are actionable ways that we can do that, just to begin to believe that our students can do this complex work. Just shifting the mindset that our students are brilliant
Yeah.
and they can meet the challenge of the grade level.
And that's the important piece, right? And I want to see how we can get, like you said, there are actionable ways because we use language, and the idea of trust doesn't feel like I can put my hand on it
Yes,
because it's something that I feel.
right.
What is, how do you know that a teacher doesn't trust a kid? Let's start there.
Mm,
Then we can
mm.
come back and say, okay, here's what you do to make sure you are showing trust. Because trust is much like engagement and learning. Trust is internal, it's not inside your head. I can't see the mechanism happening, I see the evidence. So, what is the evidence of a lack of trust?
That's an amazing question, and we see it a lot. It's when students aren't talking in the class. Students aren't being. Some students go through an entire math course, maybe their entire experience in school, and never get asked what they think or how they come to understand this mathematical concept. We did a study and interviewed students across California recently, and very few of them were ever asked about their mathematical thinking. And so that would be an evidence of a lack of trust, I would say. Um, Also, um, not allowing students to engage in these rich tasks where they can collaborate, they can have ideas that may be different, have perspectives, have solution pathways that may be different from what even the teacher may have thought about. It's not just a back of the book type of thing where the answers are there. These are tasks that students have to think and collaborate and maybe have different approaches than their classmates. So when you see work that looks the same on everybody's paper, when you go into a classroom and everybody's trying, you see compliance, right? You don't see actual thinking and people raising their hands, people trying to talk with their colleagues. How did you do that? And what, this is what I got. Can we, um, how did you get the same answer, but, in a different way? And those are the types of experiences that students need to have, right? Yeah.
So when we talk about the evidence of trust, and you
Yes.
talked about building relationships, we build, people love that, like, just build a relationship, just build a relationship, as though it just happens naturally. It's one of the toughest things to do as an educator at any level, right? But
Hmm.
particularly when you are with students and you have some challenges of your own. And I had your dear colleague Dr. Pert Creighton on a couple of
Yes.
weeks ago, and she made a really important statement. And she said sometimes the trust is not teacher to student, it's teacher to self
Yes.
regarding their own math understanding. Can you expand on that?
Yes, it's actually a part of my trust actions framework. When we think about, like, what are the things that we need to do in order to build our trust in our students, I have a trust actions framework. It's TRUST,
Yes.
simple to understand,
What does
right?
it mean?
So
Yes.
the first T is throw away labels. Let's
Ooh.
cut that out. Let's make sure that we are looking at evidence of the whole child. What are the skills that they're presenting to us, not just what are they labeled by? Is this a low
Mm-hmm.
student or a high student? Let's throw that out
Mm-hmm.
because whatever label we assign, they're going to meet that label.
They
Okay.
will meet
So
that label.
they will
Yes.
they will meet the label. The R is for respond to student thinking. And in
Mm.
order to respond to student thinking, guess what? You have to allow students to share their thinking, which means discourse needs to happen in the classroom, right? We can't respond to student thinking if we don't listen to student thinking. We can't listen to student thinking if we don't allow them to speak. And
Mm.
so, making sure that we have those opportunities so that any supports that we want to provide, we can provide that right just in time, right? The U, use high quality instructional materials. And this is specifically in math, we want to talk about materials that support conceptual understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to plan for those opportunities to make sure that students are building that understanding, and that also happens through discourse, through explaining their solutions, through talking with their colleagues, through making sure that there are relevant tasks that make sense to their daily lives. Um, and then the S is seek out brilliance.
Mm.
We have to make sure that one, we understand that students are brilliant, but two, in our actions we can show that we believe that they are brilliant by being curious about their thinking, right? We cannot just say, okay, like, did you get the right answer? That's not being curious, right? So I also have this curiosity spectrum, which I can share a little bit later, that really delves into how we think about our levels of curiosity about our students' mathematical thinking. And then the final T is where I get to answer your question about about how do we think about trust within ourselves? Because we have to be honest. The last T is take time to study the coherence within the standards. We have to be
You're
honest with
talking
ourselves.
foolish now. You're talking foolish. We
It's
got wait a
actually
minute. Wait. We gotta take time.
we have to take time, yeah, and we have to be given time too. Like we can't. It's
There
not
it
all.
is. We have to
There's
be
systems in
given
this, right?
time, right? There are systems in here
Yes,
where
right.
that are inbred structural barriers
Yes,
because learning has become a conveyor belt enterprise. It's
yes,
like luggage off the airplane. It just goes around and around and around. And we want teachers to do all this high level work
yes.
as they should do. And
Hmm.
then we do, I don't know if you're a football fan, but when there's a pylon, have you ever seen the
Hmm.
pylon?
Yes,
That's what the pylon is. Like we have the pylon for
yes,
educators. While we say on one side of our mouth, please take the time to internalize this and do this
yes.
over here. It's very high intellectual work.
Hmm.
And yet on the other side of our mouth is get through it, get through it, get through it,
Yes,
get through it, get
yes.
through it.
Pacing, yes.
Pacing, pacing, pacing. Wow. Take time.
Yeah. Take time to study the coherence. And so I call
Wow.
this the highest leverage trust action. And for this reason, because it really does take deep content knowledge
It
to
does.
be able to do all of the other things that we just
Mhm.
talked about.
Yeah.
If you're trying to seek out brilliance, you need to understand the content. You need to understand like what a different pathway than I was able to take. What could that be? So understanding that because in math is not linear. I know it feels like that because of all the different places where we gatekeep and where students end up falling off. We gatekeep too much, and that's why it feels so linear. You have to learn this before you learn that. But because math is this beautiful, creative subject, there's so many different pathways that a student can take to reach a solution, especially if the task is rich enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we think about that and we don't allow the space for students to just share their thinking, that's damage within itself. But if we are open to that, that means we have an understanding of the different pathways, then we can recognize brilliance pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
um, and then responding to student thinking, same thing. If I have different, if I have a student who may be exhibiting, um, a strategy that may be not as efficient as the others, I can offer a tool or solution and say, oh, I know what you're saying, I know what you're trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
and here's a question I can ask, here's a graphic organizer, here's something that I can offer you, a tool, a manipulative that can support that learning. And so those are the kinds of things that you could do if you really take the
Right.
time
Yeah.
to study that coherence. And it's um I love that you brought up um my colleague Deborah Parrott Creighton, because we worked together in this, and just thinking about the idea of comfort before confidence. Like,
Right.
teachers
Mm-hmm.
need to feel that confidence in order to execute well, in order to seek out brilliance, in order to, um, respond to student thinking and use those materials that are high quality. You can't just say, okay, you have the book and it's
Open it up on
green.
Monday morning.
Right.
Right. Open it. It's Monday. It's Monday. So now we're going to turn to page 27 and we're going to do
Right.
exercise number 1B and
Right.
think it's going to be rich enough. And it might be rich
Yeah.
enough, but if I don't understand it, it's not going to be rich enough because I'm not going to be able to communicate it.
Yes, I
And
don't know
I'm
the
sure,
questions to ask.
right, and I'm sure you get pushback on the idea of conceptual understanding because there's
Hmm.
argument that sometimes students are taking up so much brain power learning foundational pieces of math
Hmm.
while they're trying to learn the concepts, which has
Hmm.
become a barrier. There's a new article in Ed Week last week that
Hmm.
just came out, and they talked about this very thing. At secondary levels, students are, I don't want to say missing because it's not their fault. They have
Right.
not been taught
Yes.
basic foundational things like facts that they need. That if your brain is using a lot of time to remember 12 plus 15, you don't have space left over to do the equation. So
Yeah.
how do you help your educators really balance out, you know what? Yeah, they got to know both and. It's a both and, not an either or prospect.
Yeah, and it's a real you're calling out a real issue in secondary math, right? Um, there is a disconnect also between what students' experience are in the lower grades
Oh
and
yeah.
what their experience is in
100%.
secondary. And
100%.
so when we think about like the shift in what is being taught in elementary, we're not seeing it, it's not catching up. What, like, the secondary instruction hasn't necessarily caught up to those experiences. So in elementary now, there is a lot of work being done around conceptual development,
Mm-hmm.
and students building numeracy, and students um, being able to be a little more creative with the ways in which they're solving problems. And so what we want to do is make sure that the teachers, and this goes back to my taking time to study the coherence. Oftentimes, it's not that uh, the students can't do it; it's that the teachers don't believe that the students can. They don't know what the students are coming in with. So if I don't study that, well, in second grade they did all of this stuff with addition and subtraction. In third grade, this is when they started learning fractions. Okay, so maybe I can build off of that,
Right.
right? And start from what they know. Use the manipulatives. The manipulatives don't end in elementary.
You
And
go.
so
I
if
can
we're
foolish
not
again.
painting the picture of
Right. Right.
coherence for the students,
Right.
they're not going to connect it on their own.
They are
We have
not.
to make sure that we're building from what students already know. And
Yeah.
so that's why I continue to say that that last T, take time to study coherence, that is the way that you can build in that differentiation. That's the way that you can really truly understand and recognize the brilliance when it's in front of your face.
Yeah.
Um,
That's really important because you don't know what is brilliant if you don't understand the concept. So how will you even know the demonstration of the
yes.
brilliance necessary, which is really a
Yeah.
critical piece. And before we move on to our power moves, you brought up your curiosity spectrum. Run us
Yes.
through that very quickly. What is your curiosity spectrum?
Yeah, so I'm really, and so I just finished my first year at Stanford. Um,
Congratulations!
Thank you,
Exciting.
PhD program in math education, and I have been really curious about curiosity and its relationship with trust. And so, in my wonderings, I thought about curiosity as a spectrum,
Mm,
and when I was thinking about it, it's like, so specifically curiosity in terms of teachers' curiosity of students' mathematical thinking.
got it.
And so when we think about like where we are as, let's say, a country in terms of how curious we are about students' mathematical thinking, it's we're pretty much at the point of, do the students understand what has been taught? And so it's all of our assessments are designed to just like, did you get the right answer? Did you learn what I taught you, what this grade level content was? If we did that right, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm asking teachers to go beyond that, to say, what do you already know? What are you coming in with? And then how how did you come to know that? And is what you understand and the way you understand it different from the way I understand it? So this is like an internal kind of
Right, that
conversation,
metacognitive, yeah, that
right?
metacognitive work where we
Right.
ask students, and this is beyond that. Like this is definitely beyond sort of metacognitive thinking. They're not thinking about their thinking; they're thinking about what they know,
Yeah.
and
So
those
I,
two are separate, right? I
right.
know
So
this, yeah, because these are the sort of structures that helped me understand these big ideas, and I can trace back to maybe I'm thinking about, I use like things like jump ropes and bubble gum, right?
yeah.
I know that I know how to jump rope because
Uh-huh.
when I lived in Co-op City, we jumped rope, and this is how I came to know the idea of jumping
Yes.
rope. Yeah.
Yes. So
Mhm.
it's really the teacher being curious about how students have come to know. And in my studies, I'm learning that this is a Freirean concept. It's called epistemological
Thinking. Yeah.
curiosity. And
Hmm.
so what I want to know is, how can teachers really be authentically curious about student knowledge in a way that not only, just, engages the teacher's curiosity, but it also supports a way in for teachers to build off of students thinking how they think, not just how the teacher wants them to think. Because oftentimes that's what it is. Like, okay, teacher,
Yep.
how should I be thinking about this?
That's right. That's right.
Right.
That's where they go first.
And so we turn our brains off in our classrooms and just listen to whatever the teacher's telling me and try to figure out what they're thinking. And
Hmm.
this kind of flips that around and says, no, the teacher is really trying to figure out how the student is making sense of things. And not only that, working it. So the step beyond that is, how do I use what students are thinking in order to support new learning, right? So now I'm thinking like my students. I'm not trying to think about how I'll get them to think like me. I'm trying to
Oh,
think
okay.
about, how is
How
the
do they
student,
actually process?
right?
How does the kid in front of me process this information to get to an accurate answer? Because
Yes,
accuracy matters, right? Like
it
we want to be
absolutely
very
does.
clear. Let's be 100%
Yes,
clear right now.
correct answers
Accuracy,
matter.
okay?
But
Answers
that's not the
matter.
only thing.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not the only thing. Getting to the answer matters, but we want to be clear that, accuracy does matter because if I am using my math and I am in construction, or if I'm an
Hey.
architect, if I'm a banker, if I'm in sales, if I'm in retail, and
Hmm.
not on the retail side, but on the wholesale side, on the design side.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I'm measuring shoes. Measurement, the right measurements matter. So it's not just about
Absolutely.
the concept. The concepts and the accuracy go hand in hand. We want to make that super clear. But I
Yes.
really appreciate that you're really going to be pushing the field, right? This
Hmm.
concept of how do the educators in the classroom really lean into students and the students thinking on their own, right?
Yes.
So how do I name their thinking? So how do they name
Yes.
their thinking? How do
Yes.
I understand their thinking? And how do we come together to make sure that there is the use of this information so we
Yes.
can disrupt those numbers that we keep seeing? And that's really, really
And
important.
that's the point. That is the point.
That is,
Um, the numbers create this narrative,
yes, they
um,
do.
that, you see, Black students are always at the bottom.
Right, right. We
So
keep saying that. We really keep,
we
that is, it's predictive analytics,
it's
right?
predictive. And so what we do is we treat them like they're at the bottom.
Right.
And then we create all of these different interventions, and I want to know, how would these after school programs and interventions, how would instruction change if we operated on the belief and the understanding, not just the belief, that Black children are brilliant? How would it change? How,
Out here
how would it
talking
change?
crazy, girl.
I'm
Out
just
here
saying,
talking crazy.
wouldn't we ask more questions? Wouldn't
Yes,
we be more curious about their
yes,
thinking? Wouldn't
yes,
we want to see them do rich
yes,
tasks?
yes.
So by dumbing down the curriculum, we're already telling on ourselves, right? We're telling students, we don't think you're brilliant.
We don't.
So let's change that. Let's change our mindset. Let's change our actions, to
That makes
trust.
total sense. And so, as we think about that, here's some power moves that might help people do it.
Yeah.
And before we get to these power moves, I want to come back. Have you hit the subscribe button? Please, if you're going to be here, please, let's get in a relationship. Let's stop dating and go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And let's talk about our power moves. Number one, replace assumption with curiosity. Pause before labeling a student's response. Ask what the student's thinking may reveal and look for accuracy and sense making. So let's be a pal, PAL, right?
Yes.
Pause, ask, and look. And this matters because educators move from deficit based conclusions to deeper understanding of students' mathematical knowledge, reasoning, and capability. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, I love this so much, and that is the problem. You are hitting the nail on the head with that deficit-based conclusions, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to shift away from that, and we have, there are plenty of tools. We have, the movement towards, more culturally responsive and culturally relevant instruction in math is really strong. That is another way we need to build our knowledge, our cultural knowledge about our students, and allow them to bring their whole selves um, into the classroom. And again, I'm going to say, when I think about trust, I think about, how are we engaging our students academically? When we are in dialogue with students, specifically in dialogue with students, when the teacher is talking to a student, how do we demonstrate that we are curious about their academic knowledge? And that is, I think, and when we think about humanizing instruction, when we think about treating, or building mutual trust, with our students, that is a way to. I think I have a quote here from, uh, Paulo Freire.
Yeah, he's my new ex-boyfriend. Paolo and I have been dating for a very long time.
I love that. I love that so much. But he says that any situation in which some individuals prevent others from engaging in the process of inquiry is one of violence.
That's the power move. That
Right.
they are engaging in the violence because
Mm.
they are constraining access to the
Yes.
excellent education that a child deserves.
Yes.
Here's power move number two: treat trust as an instructional condition.
Mm.
Notice who gets rich math tasks, follow up questions, and time to explain. Examine whose thinking gets questioned with curiosity instead of corrected too quickly. Build
Mm.
routines where student thinking is expected, valued, and used. And the impact of this is students are more likely to take intellectual risks when
Mhm.
trust is built into the math environment, not left to chance.
Ooh, ooh, I need a moment for that one. Yes. So, and I would be remiss if I did not incorporate a Dr. Maya Angelou quote, because she says, have enough courage to trust love one more time and always one more time.
Always one more time. Trust
Always. And
it one more time.
that tells me, that tells us that we have to, building trust is an ongoing experience. You can't just stop. And when we think about what you brought, the power moves that you just brought up, it's reminding me that this is an ongoing process. We have to continue. We have to give the rich tasks. We have to allow students to the space and time to think, to share their ideas, and to build off of their thinking. Um, Even if we get tired, even if we're like, okay, I got to get through this lesson, we have to trust love. And that's loving on us. That
That's the
thinking
love on
about,
our kids. That's the,
yes,
because we
thinking
talk
about the
about loving kids,
academics.
and let me tell you what, we love kids to
Hmm.
death. I'm gonna tell you right
Yes,
now, we love kids to straight death,
straight.
straight to the death grade,
Yes,
right? Um, but here's what you and I both know: there
yes,
are children getting rich tasks.
yes,
Are children able to have their thinking questioned with curiosity? So
yes,
that isn't the issue. The issue is not every kid
yes.
is having this experience in math. You know, go back to my opening question: when did you realize that maybe you were believing that you weren't a math person? We keep hearing it. I'm not a math person.
Right.
First of all, there's no math gene. Like
There is no
it's not one of the 46. Like you didn't, you know what I mean? Like, this is not one of the 46. Now you might have
Right.
predisposition,
Yes.
right? But you have early exposure. But there is
Hmm.
not one of the 46. So we can
No,
all agree today that there's no such thing as a math person.
there is no such thing
There
as
is no
a
such
math
thing,
person.
right?
No.
But what we know is access is
Hmm.
uneven. And we
That's
know
true.
access is gate kept. And we know
That's true.
access is really a move that is meant to separate. You know, it has been
Yeah.
a tool. It has been a tool and remains a tool for separation. So here's our last power move: humanize the mathematical experience.
Mm.
Position students as mathematical thinkers, not performers.
Mm.
Connect math to students' ideas, identities, communities, and ways of making sense. Design discussions that invite explanation, strategy, disagreement, and revision. And what's the impact of this? Students, especially those who have been systematically marginalized, experience math as a place where their brilliance is seen, their thinking is trusted, and
Mm.
their agency is developed.
Amen. The key word in there that I saw
Uh-huh.
was invite.
Ah,
Invite is an action word, right? And so
mm,
we
yeah.
want to make sure that and that's the power move right there too, because
Mhm.
we have the power to decide whether or not I'm going to just talk through this lesson,
Yes, we do.
or I'm going to invite students into discussion.
That's right.
I have one more quote for you, and it's
Absolutely. We
to
love it.
your ex boyfriend.
Uh-oh, my ex-boyfriend's talking again.
Yes, because he said that what is really essential in this process is that both the teacher and students know that open, curious questioning, whether in speaking or listening, is what grounds them mutually, not a simple passive pretense at dialogue. And so we want to have this grounding, right?
Mhm.
We want to be, that's the humanizing effect, right? You're listening to me, I'm speaking, there's a grounding there. There's understanding and it's mutual. And that's the kind of trust. That's why I said this is an academic piece that I feel like may be missing in our conversations around building trust. How can I build it through dialogue and
Dialogue,
talking
yes.
about
Hmm.
the academic piece, talking about content?
And see,
Yeah,
that's the thing. We talk to kids about a whole lot of stuff, and we
mm-hmm,
should, right? We should know about their weekend. We should know about their, but we got to get to the business of
mm-hmm,
having as many authentic academic conversations,
yes,
because parents send their kids to school to learn things and learn
mm-hmm,
how to do things.
yes,
And the things they want their kids to learn how to do are related to clear disciplines in
yes,
mathematics, in
yes,
the English, the literature, right? And we're really getting good at making kids feel good,
yes,
but we're still robbing them of the ability and access to high level academics.
yes, yes. I completely agree with that. I think a lot of the conversation and building relationships outside of the academics is still important.
It's
Let's not,
important.
we're not
Do
saying
go
don't do
for it.
that.
Go for it. Do it.
Make
How
sure,
does it make
but
sure? Yes.
it is a tool for the teacher to really deeply understand and begin to trust the student too. So that's not even excluded from the idea of building trust. But the part that I'm focused on and the part that I continue to see that is missing in our conversations around trust is how can I, with all of the negative narratives, especially for our young Black students, when we think about the narrative that when they sit in the class, the historicity, right?
Right.
When they're sitting in the classroom with all of that baggage from the first law that said that we don't teach Black students came out in 1740 in South
1740,
Carolina.
South
When we think
Carolina.
about that historicity, that when I sit in the classroom and I, as a student, don't trust the teacher,
That's right.
that's valid, right? And
It is
so
valid. Hmm.
that's valid. That's what I'm coming in with. And now also valid is because the data shows consistently that Black students are not achieving, are not performing at the levels of their other students. We as teachers are like, well, I gotta help and uplift, and I gotta build all of this, and so all these two things are playing at the same time,
All right.
and they're both kind of keeping us keeping our Black children down. And
They
so
are.
if we can shift that mindset to say Black children are brilliant, let me figure out how brilliant, let me find out what brilliance that you have, what brilliance do you bring in, and how can that build how can we build off of that brilliance to support learning in the classroom. That is, I mean, that's amazing. And there are classrooms that are doing it. There are teachers who are in the work. And yeah, I'm excited to see where this research, how it progresses, and what comes of it. But yeah, I'm really excited about the journey ahead.
Well, thank you so much, Dionne. I'm looking forward to the comma PhD after your
Hey,
name. I can't wait to see that. Looking forward to the amazing work that you're going to help us in this profession we call education
yes,
expand and grow. And there you have it, folks. Another issue of another time, episode, session of Let's Talk Power Live. Want to give a couple of reminders to everybody. Please remember, go ahead and get your link to What Agency Requires of Adults. We are in the back to school era, that time, and agency matters, but you got to all be on the same page. You can get the link on our website, and you can get the link on LinkedIn. Actually, the article's on LinkedIn. Want to remind you to be on the lookout for our summer power chats. We've had Dr. Mary Rice Booth. We have Dr. Dwayne Chisholm, Dr. Jeremiah Sims, a bunch of wonderful voices. Athlete Cuthbertson is coming to the stage. There's lots of wonderful voices coming up. Please be on the lookout for those. And with that, we bring our time to an end. And we're going to be having Dionne back because we know that she's going to have a book out. So we're going to have her, and we're going to talk about her articles that are all going to be coming out. And we will see you next week for another episode of Let's Talk Power Live. Thank you for joining. And remember, like, subscribe, and share.